The guard's hand slammed against the glass door before it could close. Crack. "Sir, you need to leave, now." Collins Johnson froze mid-step. For half a second, his mind searched for another explanation. Someone else. Someone behind him. But the lobby was empty. The guard stood directly in front of him, palm flat against the glass, shoulders squared. Collins slowly exhaled. In his jacket pocket, his tournament registration card pressed against his fingers. Still warm from the printer. Thick cardstock, silver edges. Behind the reception desk, mounted in polished brass beneath the Lakewood crest, a sponsor plaque reflected the overhead lights. Platinum sponsor, Collins Johnson. The irony felt deliberate. "Before we move on, kindly do me a favor. I had a bet with my mother that stories like this will get me more subscribers, and she says it won't. Let's prove her wrong, my dear listeners, because stories like this deserve to be heard and felt with the heart. So let's begin. This isn't just about golf. It's about the split second we decide who belongs, the moment assumption becomes certainty, and what happens when we're absolutely sure and absolutely wrong." 3 hours earlier. Collins sat alone in his home office, staring at his laptop screen. $200,000. He leaned back, rubbed his chin, then clicked, "Approve transfer." A platinum sponsorship for the Lakewood Invitational, one of the most exclusive amateur tournaments on the East Coast. Old money. Old rules. Old traditions dressed as standards. Why drop 200 grand on a golf tournament? Not publicity. Not ego. Gratitude. Golf gave him something once. When his father died suddenly, heart attack at 52, no warning, and the house felt too quiet, golf gave him structure. Early mornings, clean lines. A game where emotion was liability and discipline was everything. He grew up caddying at courses like Lakewood, carrying heavy bags for men who spoke about him like furniture. "Kid, grab the 7-iron. Kid, you missed a spot. Kid, hurry up." Some tipped well. Most didn't. None learned his name. But those fairways taught him patience, focus, silence under pressure, lessons that carried him through engineering school, late nights debugging code, early mornings pitching investors who smiled politely until the numbers spoke louder than their assumptions. By 38, Collins owned equity in 4 startups, sat on 2 advisory boards, had a net worth that would quietly shock most of Lakewood's members. His house had more square footage than sense. His wine collection cost more than his first car. His watch was German, automatic, understated. But wealth doesn't announce itself at first glance. And status doesn't protect you from first impressions. None of that mattered when Gary Whitman saw him walk into the lobby. Gary was head of membership, keeper of Lakewood's standards. He noticed Collins instantly. Dark skin, athletic build, no visible badge, no clipboard, no golf bag. Gary's jaw tightened. Not again. He'd dealt with confusion before. Delivery drivers, vendors, guests who didn't understand Lakewood's clearly posted rules. Rules mattered here. They weren't arbitrary. They were how order was maintained. "How can I help you?" Professional words. But the tone wasn't curious. It was corrective. Collins turned, smiled politely, extended his hand. "Yes, I'm here for tournament check-in. Collins Johnson." Gary looked at the hand for a fraction of a second, long enough to acknowledge it, short enough to dismiss it. He didn't shake it. "Participants enter through the south gate," Gary said, using that patient voice reserved for explaining rules to children. "This entrance is members only." "I understand," Collins replied calmly, "but I was told to meet Lisa Brown here. She's expecting me." "Lisa's busy." Gary pivoted toward the receptionist. "Sarah, call security if he doesn't leave in 60 seconds. The temperature dropped. Collins felt it. That invisible shift. That moment when your presence stops being neutral and starts being questioned. He recognized it immediately. "I think there's a misunderstanding," Collins said evenly. "I'm the tournament's platinum sponsor." Gary laughed. Short, sharp, dismissive. "Of course you are. Let me tell you about Sarah, the receptionist. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Trembling, she'd seen the sponsor file that morning. The wire confirmation. $200,000 cleared. Months of emails coordinating banners, tea times, VIP seating. She'd typed the name Collins Johnson dozens of times. She knew. But Gary was her supervisor. Gary had been at Lakewood 15 years. Gary decided who belonged. And silence was easier than conflict, safer than speaking up, less likely to cost her the job she needed. She stayed quiet. That silence would echo later, when the house was dark and sleep wouldn't come, when she'd replay this moment, wondering what would have happened if she'd just said something. But right now, she was quiet. "I can call Lisa right now," Collins said, pulling out his phone slowly. "This'll take 30 seconds. Put that away." Gary stepped closer, voice dropping to just above a whisper. "You're leaving now, or you're leaving in handcuffs. Your choice." 2 uniformed security guards appeared from the hallway. The lobby went still. Collins felt that familiar weight settle in his chest. Not anger. He'd learned long ago that anger was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not fear. Fear gave them power they didn't deserve. Just tired recognition. A pattern repeating itself. Then, Collins. Lisa Brown stepped out of the conference room, smiling, papers tucked under her arm, reading glasses perched on her head. "You're early. I was just reviewing the banner placements and—" She stopped, saw Gary's stance. The guards, Collins standing perfectly still. Her smile vanished. The papers slipped from her hands, scattered across the marble floor. "Gary," she said, voice sharpening, "what is happening here?" "He refused to leave," Gary said quickly. "Claimed he was—" "Collins?" Lisa's eyes locked on him. Relief flickered across his face, brief but unmistakable. "Yes." Her expression hardened instantly. She turned to Gary with controlled fury. "Gary," she said, voice deadly quiet. "This is Collins Johnson, our platinum sponsor." Color drained from Gary's face, like water from a broken glass. "The man funding this entire tournament," Lisa continued, each word deliberate, precise. "The man whose name is on every banner outside. The man whose donation is paying for this reception. The man you just threatened to have arrested." "I didn't know," Gary stammered. He didn't say." "I tried to explain," Collins said quietly. 3 times. The silence that followed was crushing. The guard stepped back. Sarah stared at her desk, pulse hammering, face burning. Lisa turned to Gary. "This is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable." Collins looked at Gary, really looked at him, saw the panic, the shame, the realization that this moment was permanent. "You didn't ask," Collins said calmly. "You saw and decided." "I made a mistake," Gary whispered. "A terrible mistake. I'm sorry. I don't want you fired," Collins said. Hope flashed across Gary's face. "I want you to remember this," Collins continued. The hope died. "Remember how confident you were, how certain, how wrong." He paused. "Because the next person you judge based on what you see, they might not be standing in front of a sponsor plaque. They might not have Lisa walking in at the right moment. And you'll never know what you cost them." Collins turned to Lisa. "And on Sunday, I want Gary to present the trophy. I want him to read my name out loud slowly in front of everyone, and remember this moment." Lisa nodded. She understood exactly what Collins was doing. Consider it done. 3 days later, Gary Whitman stood on stage beneath a white tent. Spring sun filtering through the fabric, hundreds of guests watching, members, sponsors, press, families in pastels and wide-brimmed hats. His hands shook as he held the crystal trophy, heavy, cold. The microphone stood in front of him, reading Collins Johnson into that microphone, with everyone watching, felt like swallowing glass. Each syllable scraped his throat. Each word echoed across the lawn, permanent, recorded, witnessed. Collins watched from the crowd, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just watched. Gary would carry that day for the rest of his life. Not as punishment, as education, as weight he'd feel every time he made an assumption, every time he decided who belonged based on a glance. And Sarah? She quit 3 weeks later. Told HR it was for a better opportunity. Smiled when they wished her well. But late at night, alone in her apartment, she knew the truth. She replayed that moment. Gary's hand on the glass. Collins trying to explain. Her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The words she didn't say. She knew, the whole time. And she said nothing. 6 months later, Gary sat in his car outside Lakewood. Engine off. Hands on the steering wheel. He'd stayed. Lisa gave him one more chance. Collins never pressed charges, never demanded his firing. But the weight hadn't lifted. Every new face at the club made him pause now. Every assumption felt heavier. Every certainty felt dangerous. He thought about Collins every single day. Not the platinum sponsor. Not the successful businessman. The man whose hand he didn't shake. The man he threatened. The man he judged in 5 seconds. Gary pulled out his phone. Stared at the screen. He'd drafted the message 17 times. Deleted it 17 times. I know I apologized that day. But I need you to know I think about what I did. What I almost cost you. What I learned. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. Thank you for the lesson. He hit send before he could delete it again. The response came 3 hours later. We all have moments we're not proud of. The question is what we do after. Keep learning, Gary. Keep growing. Gary read it 5 times. Then broke down in his car. Not from shame. From the weight of being forgiven when he didn't deserve it. Collins never told that story publicly. He didn't need to prove anything. He stayed quiet. But he thought about Sarah sometimes. The receptionist who knew, who stayed silent. He wondered if she ever found her voice. He hoped she did, because the world had enough Garys, people who judged too quickly. What it needed was fewer Sarahs, people who knew better but chose silence. 1 year later, Collins received an email from Sarah. Subject: Thank you for a lesson I didn't know I needed. Dear Mr. Johnson, you don't know me, but I was there that day. I was the receptionist who said nothing when I should have said everything. I quit 3 weeks later. Not because of what happened to you, because of what happened to me. I couldn't look at myself anymore. I've spent this year working at a nonprofit, helping people who've been denied access to spaces they belong in, teaching myself to speak up, to be uncomfortable, to choose courage over comfort. I wanted you to know that what you did that day, choosing education over revenge, changed 2 people, not 1. Gary learned to question his assumptions. I learned that silence has a cost I'm not willing to pay anymore. Thank you. Sarah Collins read it twice, then forwarded it to his mother with 1 line. Mom, remember when you said 1 moment can't change people? She called him immediately. You win, she said softly. Collins smiled. We both did. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been Gary? Made a judgment based on what you saw in 5 seconds? Have you ever been Sarah? Stayed quiet when you knew you should speak? Or have you been Collins? Standing there, credentials in your pocket, trying to explain while someone decides who you are? Here's what I learned from their story. Assumptions aren't the problem. We all make them. It's what we do when we realize we're wrong. Do we double down? Or do we learn? Do we stay silent? Or do we speak? Do we demand revenge? Or do we choose restoration? Gary chose growth. Sarah chose courage. Collins chose forgiveness. And all 3 became better than they were before. That's the story. Not the confrontation, not the humiliation, the transformation, the moment when we stop defending who we were and start becoming who we should be. Leave a comment. Tell me your story, because this conversation is just beginning.